The story that I want to tell you happened relatively recently on New Year's Eve. These were those pre-holiday days when people, like ants, scurry around the shops and buy up the products left on the shelves. It was on one of these days of general insanity and excitement that the events described below began. Filled with New Year's mood, I decided to run into the local shopping center for a minute to buy tinsel, a garland, and other little things. As it turned out, this minute stretched for a decent 1.5 hours. And it's not even that having gaped at the bright shop windows, I lost track of time. No. The mall was packed full of people. You probably imagine what a distraught crowd is rushing back and forth with dozens of giant packages and bags. Try to figure out what's what in this mess. Toys, Christmas trees, decorations, literally for all the frenzied buyers were ready to strangle. It even came to screams and fights, when some unlucky and even tipsy individuals began to tear the same garland from each other. And squealing snotty children, grumpy impudent grandmothers, and kilometer-long queues are another story. So, somehow I got out of this hell and hobbled to the car. During these 1.5 hours of hassle, I did not manage to buy a normal garland. Probably the normal goods ended and smart and resourceful sellers, for lack of other options, got a frank marriage or Chinese from the bins of the warehouse. Here are the freaks, huh? I thought. I sullenly got into the car, slamming the door. All my New Year's mood was irrevocably spoiled. On the way home, I cursed this day and this holiday on top of everything. Evil resentment consumed me. When I reached my dwelling in a hurry, I threw off my outer clothes and collapsed on the sofa in a sack in complete impotence. The TV didn't even turn on. And after a while I passed out. I shivered uncomfortably, rubbed my temples, and looked around. It was really cold in the room. My legs were pretty numb. When I stood on the floor, I couldn't feel my fingers. How long have I been lying like this? The room was very dark. I looked at the clock, it stopped at 6:30. The time of my arrival very strange. Trying to figure everything out, I got up from the sofa and began to look for the cause of the sudden cold. She was found quite quickly. The door wide open gave an eloquent answer to my question. After locking it and moving a couple of steps away, I again wondered what the hell. Didn't I close the door when I came home? Yes, sort of. No, I remember exactly how I threw the keys on the bedside table by the window. Exactly, a nightstand. I was already heading towards her when suddenly something stopped me. Some kind of unpleasant sensation. I froze for a moment and scuffed my foot on the laminate. There was water. I looked at my sock, it was all wet and dirty. Without having time to think about anything, I automatically glanced at the floor. He was covered in big wet footprints. I was thrown into a fever despite the fact that the room was a clear minus. I immediately connected everything that happened in my head. Someone followed me, opened the door, and now calmly paces around the house. Well, Joker, you'll wait. At that moment, I was not so much scared as angry. I quietly took the poker from the fireplace and followed the tracks. Some of them still have not melted, icy crust covering the floor. And then it was as if an obsession left me. Who could come to me? So that you understand, my house is located in the forest about 20 kilometers from the city. And I don't think that some smart guy would intentionally walk such an impressive distance just for the sake of a stupid joke. If it were a thief, he would steal something. So no, everything is in its place, nothing is touched. Very strange. On some weave thoughts together. But the more I thought, the more illogical details I found. Suddenly, a gust of a weak breeze that came from nowhere brought a strange smell to the nose. It smelled of either meat or rotten meat. No, it's really not funny anymore. A chill and a sharp smell came from the kitchen. That's where the footprints led. I tiptoed into the kitchen and abruptly turned on the light, brandishing the poker. And there, God forbid you see this. The refrigerator, like all cabinets, was turned inside out and their contents were scattered randomly. The window was also broken, the glass and frame were completely knocked out. The wallpaper hung in tatters, the chairs were broken into pieces, and on the dining table lay the disfigured carcass of an elk. From a huge laceration on the belly of the animal, blood oozed weakly, flooding the tablecloth and the carpet under the table. The horns were broken off at the base and lay all in the same bloody mess of giblets and rotten intestines, slightly covered with ice. From such a spectacle, I threw up right on the threshold of the room. I fell on my ass in horror, trying to suppress another urge to vomit and sigh. I started to beat like a perforator. My heart was ready to jump out of my chest. What happened here? Who could do it? Why didn't I hear this? My questions, fueled by wild adrenaline, were spinning in my head like a centrifuge. However, the answer to me was only the winter wind coming from the window and the glazed look of the moose head rolled on its side. But that was just the beginning. I began to slowly crawl back to the passage, still squeezing the poker in a death grip. I was roused from my daze by the flickering light of a chandelier. The kitchen light bulb, after blinking several times, exploded with a loud pop. And through the flash of sparks, I was able to distinguish him. In the dark night window, a huge black silhouette resembling a bear was noticeable. Only bears have never been in these parts. In the light of the moon, his black, green, greasy skin shone, and his small yellow eyes looked at me with a predatory look. We looked at each other for a few seconds, after which the shaggy something jerked sharply to the side, moving out of sight. I also jumped as if scalded, running back into the hall in a semi-hysterical state. You can't let yourself go. You can't lose sight of him. There were 4 windows in the hall, 2 from the facade and on the sides. I took turns looking out for this monster in the darkness of the window openings. Suddenly, an incomprehensible rattle came from somewhere above. I ran up to the stairs like a bullet and froze in horror at the first step with the poker carried over my shoulder. I did not dare to go upstairs, because I understood that the stairs were the only way down, and in case of extreme danger, jumping from windows into 2-meter snowdrifts was very risky. And as soon as I thought about it, something terrible happened. Something rustled loudly in the fireplace behind me. I still looked in the direction of the noise in a stupor, unable to look away. A moment and black soot with ash fell down. My eyes widened. A thin reddish hand appeared from the fireplace. She fumbled with her black claws, scratching at the stonework, trying to grab on. After that, another creature crawled out of the chimney. It was no longer the monster at the window, I was sure of it. This creature was completely bald. A tiny head popped out of the firebox without any physiological openings, except for a huge round mouth. I didn't have the courage to see the new alien in its entirety. At the same moment, in 3 jumps, I took off up the stairs, not immediately realizing that I had driven myself into a trap. Your mother. But it was impossible to stay below. I stood at the wall and began to listen. A heavy step was heard under the windows. Apparently, the shaggy one had returned. On the ground floor, the swarming in the chimney continued. After a while, a thin, faceless creature apparently got out and crawled into the kitchen with a squelch. I completely turned into hearing. A crunch and champing came from below. Most likely, the fireplace monster was busy carcassing an elk. And then a daring plan came into my head. After waiting for the monsters to lose their vigilance, I began to descend the stairs, trying to do everything quietly and at the same time abruptly. Hoping that these bastards did not chop up my car, I went for the keys. Where did I leave them? Exactly, they were in a jacket pocket. Oh shit! The jacket is on the couch. I stalked over to the sofa, constantly staring at the kitchen doorway. My guesses turned out to be correct. The creature ruffled the dead animal on my table with pleasure. Without looking, I felt for my jacket, lifted it up, and immediately the keys fell loudly from my pocket to the floor. Damn it! Not that. I closed my eyes. In the kitchen, everything was instantly quiet, and my heart began to beat in wild panic. You have to run. And from behind the door jamb, this bloody image leaned out. I grabbed the keys and rushed to the door with all my strength. Running out into the street, I completely forgot about the second monster. And so after a few seconds, from the dark pines came heavy breathing and stump. It was Shaggy. I ran to the car. Already running up, I exhaled internally. The car was in order. The stomping behind him became louder, and naughty fingers could not find the door unlock button. There was little time left, so I smashed it with all my foolishness into the side glass, breaking both it and my elbow. Jumping into the cabin, I stuck the keys in the ignition the first time. The machine roared, raising a sheaf of snow dust. And as soon as I started to drive away, a powerful push flew into the back door. Shaggy rammed my car, crushing it like plasticine. But there was no stopping me. A sharp turn and now I'm rushing to the city. Shaking hands, squeezing the steering wheel. As it turned out, I started to celebrate early. A few kilometers later, something loomed in the window I had broken. At first, I thought that I was imagining things, but then I realized with horror that this was not so. Parallel to the car, another creature was rushing through the forest. Only this one was 3 times larger than the previous ones, only her unnaturally long thin limbs were visible, every second flashing among the tree trunks. As I noticed, it moved on all fours, but even so its height exceeded a couple of meters. In desperation, I pressed the gas pedal to the floor, trying to overtake the pursuer. But he did not think to lag behind. Even when the speed of the car exceeded, the image did not lag behind a single step. And then something happened that I never foresaw. Distracted by the monster chasing me, I completely forgot to follow the road. The car began to wag from side to side. I tried to put it back on track, twisted the steering wheel all the way, but at such a speed it was impossible to do something. A bump and the car spun around its axis, after which it soared into the air and, turning over several times, fell into a ditch. I woke up lying in the back seat with a broken forehead. My head was spinning. Through the fragments of the front glass, I saw a hood folded into an accordion, from under which smoke poured out in clubs. I tried to get up, but my attempts were stopped by a sharp pain. I was horrified to find that my left hand was tightly squeezed between the seat and the body of the car. The whole body ached at once. I leaned back, trying to fight back the tears and breathe. Suddenly I heard the crunch of snow somewhere very close. My body exploded automatically, completely forgetting about the pain. And then, in the light of a single burning headlight, a terrible muzzle with black eye holes appeared. Absolutely gray, withered skin was wrapped around the skull of an unknown giant creature. It tore off the already dangling door with one movement and reached for me. I, sobbing, crawled away from the bony hand approaching me. No longer knowing what to do, I began to kick the limb with my feet and fight back in every possible way. With my free hand, I felt for some kind of box and began to hit my nasty fingers with all my strength. The tinsel I bought today fell out of the box. She hung on the wrist of that monster. And then, in an instant, the creature stopped, sticking out of the car a hand with decorations hanging on it. Nothing happened for a minute, and then the creature got up and with unhurried steps went off somewhere into the forest. I, exhausted, wounded and frightened, passed out. I woke up in the hospital. All the relatives gathered next to my bunk. I later learned from them that an elderly couple who was driving to the city in the morning had noticed my car. They called an ambulance. With a joint effort, I was pulled out of a mangled car in an unconscious state and taken to the hospital with severe frostbite. Here I lay all the last time, while my fractures and abrasions healed. Now everything is fine. I did not become disabled or something like that. But one question still torments me: who were those creatures? I thought about this for a very long time, and now, after the lapse of time, I can put forward my own assumptions. On that ill-fated day, my mood left much to be desired, and therefore I cursed the new year aloud. This most likely was the cause of all my troubles. But as soon as the monsters saw the tinsel, they realized that I might not be without a festive spirit and left me alone. I don't know if this is true. But this is the only logical explanation I can give to these events. I did not tell the doctors as well as the family what happened that night. He only lied that some gang of satanic fanatics decided to mock on New Year's holidays. And whether they believed it or not, it does not matter. All the same, no one is able to understand what I experienced then, and at least another scarecrow will appear on the internet. But now I will warn you, be vigilant and careful. For you, a word thrown in the heat of the moment may mean nothing. However, you never know who or what you can anger with this.